We now know so much more than we did yesterday at this time. The suspect behind bars right now leaked the classified documents out, and he's been doing it since 2022. But how did the worst Pentagon leaks in history go from a gamer chat room of 20 for the rest of the world to find out and, in our case, be horrified by? Let's see when it started. About late 2022, this group gets together in the middle of the pandemic and say, hey, let's talk to each other. The oldest being Jack Teixeira, who would end up being the chief suspect through it. And they're talking about guns, they're talking about girls, and they're talking about the military in a gamer site. But they say, whatever you do, this guy Jack Teixeira, we now know his name, do not share this outside the group. So that continues, but on March 1st, everything changes because it goes from that chat room to another 4chan chat room, to a Russian Telegram chat room, to being a worldwide scandal as these documents get leaked out. What's in these documents? Things about what's happening in the Ukraine war, our relationship with South Korea, our disappointment with the UAE, and the way we were able to listen to the Russians. Let's move on as we see this timeline, and let me tell you a little bit about the guy that we actually caught. So let's switch gears. This is him. The picture that's now released. At 18, he joins the National Guard, and at which time he gets stationed for a little bit in. Do we remember where he got stationed in New England?
Cape Cod.
Otis in Cape Cod. So here he is at 21 years old. He's kind of the senior guy in the group. Here's what he does. He holds the highest level security clearance. Why? Because he's in charge of keeping up communications in his unit. And he not necessarily has to know what's in those communications, but he's got to make sure it's done. But he takes what's in there and he starts publishing them. In the beginning, he's copying them over. At the end, he's just taking pictures of them where you could see some of the things in his mom's kitchen in the backdrop. So among the young men in the chat room, this is, by the way, he formed it and named it Thug Shaker Central. His nickname was OG. And now he faces charges of the Espionage Act. He knew as soon as it leaked outside that 20-person group, he was in a lot of trouble, and man, is he. The Washington Post and the New York Times were all ahead of the story. The FBI says to be surveilling him, and after they surveilled him, they realized the New York Times was at the door first, and when the New York Times was up there first, a short time after, in comes the SWAT team, in comes the military. They drag him out in his red shorts. So the state of the war in Ukraine is among the things that are out there, including the hits that Ukraine has taken, the fact that we have special forces on the ground in and out the embassy, revealed the secrets about friends and foes. It damaged our relationship with South Korea, damaged our relationship with Israel, damaged our relationship with the UAE, and also the way we do operations with Russia and with China, to be able to listen into Russian intel and the turbulence that they have at the highest level. Also important to point out, when you talk about what's happening with this war, the Russians are fighting with each other. They're fighting with each other on the casualty numbers. They're fighting with each other on who gets the ammo. They're fighting with each other on the Wagner Group, as well as the FSB. They are not on board with this war. Ukraine has taken tremendous punishment. And we'll see what's going to emerge from this, because right now the war is ongoing, and we know this. The Ukraine had to change their tactics for the expected spring surge because we exposed everything through this 21-year-old. He says he's not a whistleblower, but in the big picture,